Hello everybody, so I've got a very narrow window of opportunity to get a brew on, and I'm going to use that to actually try out something I've been meaning to do for a little while, which is an experiment into how quickly it's possible to do an all grain brew. So I'm going to do a 15-minute mash and boil and adjust all of my other processes to try and get this done as fast as possible. Wish me luck. Okay, so yeah, the wife is out at work this morning. The weather's terrible today, so we've got the arse end of that storm that's been blowing through the UK at the moment, and it's just forecast to rain all day and totally miserable. So I'm going to be brewing in the kitchen, but I've only got till 11 o'clock to get this done. It's now 9:30, but yeah, I'm going to do everything that I can to try and get this done, and also just find out whether or not it is feasible to get an all grain brew done in hopefully around about an hour. So that's my target. We shall see if that's actually doable. I haven't prepped anything apart from getting all the equipment out and just working out what I need to do with the water and stuff like that. So I've got my ingredients and all of my equipment in the kitchen from out the shed. Other than that, I haven't prepped anything, so I'm going to be doing everything from scratch in terms of the setup and brew of the beer. No pre-preparation beforehand. So what am I going to do to try and speed it up? So I already mentioned at the start, 15-minute mash and boil. That's the main thing. Some of you may have read about this on Brewlosophy. So they've done a series of experiments called the short and shoddy experiments. I'll put a link down to one of those in the description. But they're essentially all based around doing 15-minute mash and boil, I think, yeah. And also just doing everything else as many shortcuts as possible. So what else can you do apart from that? Because obviously that takes off a huge amount of time straight away. So you're potentially looking at 45 minutes times 2, so an hour and a half cut out already. But if you're looking at a 4 or 5 hour brew day, that still leaves you with loads of other time. So what else am I going to do to try and cut this down? I'm looking at, first of all, reducing the batch size. So obviously most people would prefer to get as much brewed as possible in each go, but 10 litres for me is an acceptable amount of beer to make in one go, especially if I'm able to shorten the time down. I've done a lot of 10 litre batches in the past where I'm using it just to experiment or do smaller brews, and it also means I can just do a brew in a bag method on the stovetop in the kitchen, which is quicker and easier than getting the full kit out. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And the one thing I know is that with the smaller volumes, you reduce times for heating, cooling, and everything else because there's less thermal mass to deal with. Related to that, today I'm going to be using hot water straight out of the tap. So we've got a combi boiler here, so the water should be okay to use for brewing straight from that. And obviously that's going to hopefully give me a bit of an advantage speed-wise in terms of getting the water up to strike temperature for mashing. As I said, I'm going to be doing brew in a bag. So the other part of that is I'm going to be doing full volume brew in a bag. So I'm not doing any sparging at all, which cuts more time out of the equation. So everything is in the pot in one go, drain it through, and you can put it straight on to boil straight away. After that, obviously the boil itself is already shorter. Hopping wise, I'm just putting all my hops in at 5 minutes, not doing anything else, no whirlpool or anything, because obviously that's going to add extra time on at the end. And yeah, 5-minute hop addition, that's it. It gets me enough IBUs for a decent pale ale, so I'm looking at about 30 IBUs roughly, and that's for, depending on how the efficiency goes, about a 5% beer. Now, I know that with the shorter mash and boils, I've done the 30-minute ones before, sometimes your final gravity can come out a little bit higher, or at least it does for me, and I'm not sure whether or not I'll get the same level of efficiency. Logically, I would expect not to get quite as good an efficiency, but as long as it's somewhere between sort of 65 and 70%, it should be within the region that I want the OG to come out at. So yeah, shortened mash and boil, lower volume, only one hop addition in at 5 minutes, no whirlpooling, full volume mash and sparge. Cooling, there's not really any other way for me to speed that up. A lot of you will be thinking at the moment, well, why not do a no chill method? which is a really good, valid way to speed up your brewing. But for this, I want to have the whole thing done and into the FV with the yeast pitched before I kind of claim that it's a finished brew. So that's my ideal. I want to have the brew kind of done, start to finish. Maybe won't include cleanup time in this, although with one pot brewing, it's not really much of a cleanup anyway. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, that's it. Let's have a very quick look at the recipe, and then we'll get on because I'm already running out of time. This is a really bad idea trying to do this. I think I'm gonna end up in trouble with the wife, I reckon, but fingers crossed it'll all be fine. So yeah, recipe: 2 grams pale ale malt. So that's another way to speed it up. I'm not messing around with loads of different grains to weigh out. Just a single malt, pale ale malt, beds, 2 kilos. Should give me about 1044 if I get 70% efficiency, or I think it'll be a bit lower than that. 25 grams of Galaxy in at 5 minutes, 22 grams of Cascade. So if it was a 19 litre batch, we're looking at roughly equivalent to throwing 100 grams of hops in at 5 minutes, which is going to hopefully produce a fairly hoppy beer. And we'll see how it goes. I don't know whether I'll bother dry hopping it, probably not, but that's kind of separate to the brew day, so it doesn't really add any time on. And I've put down for the yeast BRY 97, which is the Lalmond West Coast American yeast. So yeah, just first time I'm using that, I thought I'd give it a go. It's supposed to flocculate quite well, and again, sometimes with the shorter mash and boils, I found that the beers can tend towards being a little bit more hazy, but hopefully that will help to counteract that. So that's it, pretty straightforward. Let's get brewing. Okay, so the time is 9:41. Well, I've just come up to 9:42. This is me officially starting. First things first, I've got to measure out the water. Okay, so this water is already at nearly 60 degrees. I only need to get it to 68, so that's definitely going to save me a load of time there. So I'll just bang the lid on here and then get it up to mash temp, and I'll go and mill the grain quickly while I wait. Okay, I've moved the camera so you can get a bit of a better view of what's going on. Now, water treatment wise, I'm not using RO water. As I said, that just adds way too much time onto this for speedy brewing. So as it's tap water, I'm going back to the trusted CRS, and I'm just used the water calculator on Jim's beer kit to just do a very basic general purpose water treatment. So this is really just to strip out some of the carbonates that I know that I've got too much of in my water, particularly for this type of pale ale. And I'm just going to be putting in 10 mils of CRS to neutralise that. So it's just under, works out to just under a millimetre of CRS per litre. Okay, so we're at strike temp. In fact, I've gone a little bit beyond it, but never mind. I can just stir it loads and bring that down. So let's get this mashed in as quickly as possible. Okay, so I'm pretty much going to stay here and stir this throughout just to try and get the maximum efficiency out of the malt. Yeah, so my mash temp is definitely higher than I was intending. I wanted a nice low mash temp because of the problem that I said with the FG obviously finishing a bit higher. I think because it doesn't have as long, maybe some of the sugars don't get broken up into the less complex types or shorter chain sugars when you do the shorter mash time. So although it might be converted, it's not necessarily as fermentable. If anyone's got actual science knowledge versus my pseudo understanding of it, then feel free to chip in on that point, but that's what I think it is. So although people talk about the mash being converted, it's maybe still not as fermentable when you do the shorter time. So yeah, it's about 67 at the moment. I wanted it more about 64, 65, but as I said, I'm just going to stir all the way through, and then that will come down fairly quickly, I think. Right, so there's our hops weighed out. A decent portion of pellets there for 10 litres. and some badly broken up Protafloc tablet to go in to the boil as well at the same time. Let's stir it up a bit more. Right, that's 15 minutes up on the mash. That went bloody quick. So whacking on the hob here, and gonna give it one last stir. I'll probably let this warm up a little bit, try and get it up to sort of mash out temperature, or at least over 70, and then lift the bag out, drain it on the other pot, and get the lid on this so we can try and get it up to a boil as quickly as possible. Yeah, so the mash temp did drop down to about 64 over the course of that 15 minutes with the lid off. So God knows where it's going to end up now in terms of FG. Right, as I suspected, this is probably the bit that's going to stop me getting it done in an hour. The time to heat up, basically. So if I had a bigger hob or an electric pot that was more powerful, it might be doable, but on this it's just taking too long to kind of get it up to the boil. So this part and probably the cooling is what's going to be the longest part of the process today. But that's up to about 76 now, so I'm just going to hoik this out, leave it to drain, and then I can put the lid back on here and hopefully get it boiling as quickly as possible. Right, so I've drained the rest of the bag into this pot over here. I'm going to boil that small amount in there, or get it up to a boil, and then add it into the main pot just to speed this up a bit. We've got about 20 minutes left if I was going to do it in an hour, so that's not going to happen because we're not even at a boil yet. But revised target, hour and 20 minutes I reckon is still doable, which is still bloody quick by all grain terms, so let's see what happens. Okay, apologies for the noise, I've got to have the extractor fan on, otherwise the whole house will smell like a beery sauna. The second pot is boiling, so I'm going to chuck that in. Ow, steamy. We're nearly at 10:30. Oh, hello Thomas. There's a pirate threatening me over there. Yeah, this is just about to come up to the boil as well, so I'm just going to put the lid back on there. So that's just hit a boil, and I've only just saved the boil over there by taking the lid off. So we've just gone 10:30. Getting to the boil took longer than the actual mash, but let's get that timer started. Okay, so that's about 5 minutes left. Protafloc in, and then I'm going to bag up these hops. So that's the alarm for the hops. In they go. Right, that's it. 15-minute boil is up. We are at 10:47, so yeah, it's going to be over an hour, but I think an hour and 20 is still doable. So flame off. Let's get it in the sink and get the chiller hooked up. So there's water going through the chiller. We've got cool blocks on the bottom. I'm going to stir it round as well, so this should get chilled as fast as possible. Yeah, I reckon we'll be done by 11, hopefully. Right, there she is. So we're pretty close to the 10 litre target for volume. Let's get the yeast pitched in. So I'm just chucking in about half this packet of Brew 97. Do a little bit more just in case. That should do. And the time, let's try and get that in focus, is about 3 minutes past 11. So that's about an hour and 21 minutes from heat going on to pitching the yeast. Pretty chuffed with that, to be honest. I thought it was going to be nearer to 2 hours in reality. I know I was targeting an hour, but that was speculative to say the yeast. Little pun there. So an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah, not bad that. Okay, so final thoughts on the 15-minute boil and mash brew day that I did. I didn't manage to finish the video off on the day because, as I said, I had to rush off and pick up the wife right after I'd finished brewing. but everything kind of went pretty smoothly, although it was quite hectic. The beer did come out with a lower OG than I was aiming for, so I did get 1038, as you can see in the end, which worked out about 60% efficiency. So there was a bit of an efficiency drop, but I was being very optimistic in terms of trying to get the same sort of level of efficiency that I do with the normal process. So 60% for a 15-minute mash is still really good. As for how the beer's going to come out, it's in the fridge behind me fermenting away. Doesn't seem to be having any problems so far. Smells quite nice, but we'll just have to wait and see how the final product comes out. So there'll be a video coming up soon of a taste test of that, so stay tuned and watch out for that. Hopefully it'll be a good one. Cheers.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or Duder or, you know, El Duderino.